Sorry, my timing was off there. I couldn't actually think of what on earth we were, what my time frame was there.
You were a second behind, and then you got anxious about it. Who's surprised on that?
Dude, I live in a constant state of anxiety. Like, it's literally ingrained in my blood.
Yes.
I feel like it's a major part of who I am, which this is... How many episodes deep are we in this show at this point, man?
Like, we published 85.
85. We have our 86th episode coming out this week.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Dude, that is crazy. I'm sure the question is, how on earth are you guys doing a podcast, live streaming, and what exactly is the topic of conversation here? That is a great question. And the concept, the crux of this, I'm sorry, maybe the genesis? I don't know. Aaron, you're the wordsmith here. I speak sometimes and words happen.
The core concept in this conversation.
Yeah. Core concept in this conversation. Wow. What would we have said to ourselves 5 years ago?
And this kind of derives from our whole, we're going back to our roots and looking to water them thoroughly of what we've been through, how it changed us, and what we learned. Because we realized that that's who we're trying to help. We're trying to help the people who are going through what we have been through. As Aristotle said, once you cross over the line to the other side, being able and willing to reach back and help others across that same line.
Yeah, beautiful words from Aristotle too. Aaron, you and I have been on a journey now for 85, 86 episodes, if not technically longer, because we've started recording even earlier than that. And depending on how the episode releases ended up working out and what episodes got scrapped and so forth, we've been doing this since what comes before June? May?
A lot of things come before June.
Well, specifically 1 month before June, which is May of 2023, was the first time that Aaron and I sat down and actually recorded something. Those episodes didn't make it, but we've ramped up where we're at with the show so much since then, and I really think it would be a service to you as the audience and for Aaron and I to actually take the opportunity to sit down and kind of actually run through what have we been through, what have we learned, and what changed us.
Yeah, that really foundational question that we're trying to work through with this episode of what would we say to ourselves 5 years ago is such a difficult question to answer, even for our audience. What in the world could you have said to yourself 5 years ago?
Not only was it 2020 when right before the pandemic hit and everything got closed down and we were forced to exist with ourselves, but we also were going through our own issues. At the time, I was suffering from major anxiety disorder. A generalized anxiety disorder is what it's usually referred to as, but to me, it felt like it was major, like it was everything. It was all encompassing. The only thing I knew how to do was drink, and that's all I ever did. I drowned out all of my anxieties with whatever I could find, vodka, wine, wine. But here I am, fast forward 5 years, spoiler alert, I'm actually 4 months sober. I haven't had a touch of alcohol in 4 months, which I'm not gonna lie, that's the longest since I've been 21 that I've gone without alcohol, and it's not stopping.
And for me, 5 years ago, I was starting my medical retirement process. I had just come back stateside. I had found out how trashed my spine actually was. And there's a lot I would say to that guy. Namely, don't listen to that nurse practitioner or whatever in Poland who told you to quit lifting and quit living your life, but find out how to live your life while also taking care of your body and your mind.
Jeez, man. That's where this episode is going to be. That's what we plan on talking about. This fireside chat is for the people who feel stuck, lost, or exhausted. Because Aaron and I, we've been there too. We've suffered. We've gone through our Shawshank Mile. We got to a point where we didn't think there was a light at the end of that tunnel. We thought that tunnel was all there was. And that's not where we're at today. It is important for you to understand that this episode and this stream is not a lecture, right? We're not sitting here telling you that you're wrong and that you have a problem and that you need to fix it, right? Growth comes from those who seek it. I was listening to this video earlier and it was absolutely beautiful. The quote from it that stuck with me like glue was, "The teacher comes when the student is ready."
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it, right? Aaron and I, we're not going to sit here and tell you that you need to grow. If you found this live stream in this episode, it's probably because either the universe or subconsciously your mind found your way here because maybe you are ready for it. Aaron and I, we're not gurus, we're not healers, we're not teachers. We're just two average dudes who went through it. And what we learned, we want to make sure we pass on to you so you don't have to go through it the same way we did.
If you're stuck in the pipe that is your Shawshank Mile and you can't see the light, wipe the shit from your eyes. There's a light there. And the thing that's going to keep you from seeing it are these cognitive delusions that we build and we tell ourselves. One thing that's helped me a lot with my depression, ask the second question. Whenever I have a bad day and that initial thought is, I'm an asshole, you need to look for evidence for or against that claim. Am I an asshole? Do the people around me hate me because of the fact that sometimes when I'm stressed out and overwhelmed that I'm short or I snap or I get frustrated? No, they love me and understand me. So I need to extend that same grace to myself. And that's going to be kind of the core component of my message. Finding grace and compassion for yourself and others around you. And whichever one of those things is easier for you, drive towards that and it will naturally enhance the other.
Beautiful. I do want to talk a little bit about what anxiety and depression are. Chances are, if you're watching this, you probably already have a pretty good idea. But there are some physical symptoms and some mental loops that I think are key to discuss when actually pointing out anxiety and depression. I do have some information here. I hope y'all can forgive me for reading a script. I think it's fair. So physical symptoms, we're talking about a racing heart, tight chest, brain fog, exhaustion. So these were things that I lived my life in every day when I was really going through it and not seeking any kind of help. The fog specifically was exasperated heavily by the alcohol and the hangovers constantly. That didn't help at all. But the racing heart, like I started developing tendencies of like agoraphobia. It got to the point where I felt like if I left my house, something bad was going to happen, either out there when I'm driving to work or driving to go get groceries, or here at the house because I'm not home. It felt like no matter where I went or what I did, something bad was bound to happen, probably because I left. For me, the easiest thing when I had anxiety was the course of inaction. I would stay home. I would do nothing. Doing nothing isn't entirely fair. I did find ways to, occupy my time. That wasn't completely drinking, but that was when I first was introduced to at the time, I had no idea, but she was going to be my wife. That small, innocuous happenstance is what really started putting me on the path to recovery and seeking help and everything. But what I'm trying to get to is my anxiety got to a point where I just did not want to leave. I felt like the easiest thing to do would be to stay where all my favorite things were, my cats, my stuff, and just hole up here in my fortress because this was my safe space. And it did not help. It did not help whatsoever. It would put me in situations like mental loops, right? Where we're talking about like overthinking, feeling like nothing will ever change. That was one of the biggest issues I had to suffer through, was constantly thinking that my life was never going to get better. In fact, that was the biggest lie I kept telling myself, and I kept believing over and over that my life is never going to get better. I'm a terrible person. I will always be a terrible person. I might as well drink. Man, tough stuff to kind of express, you know?
Yeah. I was kind of in a similar situation 5 years ago where I'd just come back from overseas to start my med board process, and I found my beautiful wife who's sitting here with me now. That was also the height of my depression. I had Charlie the Wonder Dog, who we all know and love. I would wake up in the morning, walk Charlie, go to work, come home, walk Charlie, lay in bed and disassociate until I had to walk Charlie before bed, go to sleep, do it again. I engaged in a lot of masking. I thought the more I do, the more proof that is that I'm not depressed. Action is a great medicine, but as we've said many times on this show, our issues grow in the darkness. You have to turn and face it, shine a light on it, in order to truly understand it and thereby confront it and grow past it.
Yeah, incredibly well put. And that does actually bring up a couple things too. Talking about anxiety and depression, it's one of those moments, like, who here remembers the quote from The Office where he's like, I wish you could tell you were in the good old days when you were still in the good old days. But it's almost the opposite here, right? Like, you know, you start telling yourself these things like, maybe I'm just lazy, or maybe I'm just weak, or I'm overreacting, you know, maybe what I'm dealing with isn't that serious, right? Like that's one of the big lies we like to tell ourselves when we're facing down these problems. Instead of facing these emotions, we go about it like Aaron talked about, with overworking ourselves, saying, well, the classic, you can't outwork a bad diet. Well, you can't outwork bad mental health either, right? Like, it just doesn't happen like that. You can't go to the gym and lift for 4 hours a day and be like, yep, this is going to be fun. You're focusing on your physical health, but your mental health, you haven't done anything to actually directly impact it. And a lot of people say that the gym is a great form of therapy, which it is, right? Physical activity is a great way to help get that stagnant energy, that depressive energy, that anxiety energy flowing, right? But it's like eating a salad once in a while. It doesn't really do anything on its own. It's when you're consistent and you are taking on multiple aspects that are actually going to make the biggest amount of change. Working out isn't going to fix your depression. It can help. It will help. But it's not going to fix it.
I was recently listening to an interview, surprise, surprise, and it was a neuroscientist who focuses on optimizing people. Their 3 pillars were sleep, diet, exercise. And if you're not sleeping well, you're not doing anything well. If you're not feeding yourself right, it's just putting absolute garbage in your gas tank and expecting your car to function properly. And exercise. If you're not driving forward, you are going to be rolling backwards. So we have a slightly different trinity here, but I think that's a really phenomenal one from somebody who knows way more stuff than me for people to look at. If I'm not sleeping well, why is that? What unresolved traumas do I have? I think an amazing way to find that grace for ourselves to facilitate healing is Ryan Higginson's crystal ball theory. What all have I been through that's brought me to this point? Look at your patriarchal line. What has come from your matriarchal line? I get depression from my patriarchal line. I get anxiety from my matriarchal line. So look at everything that's brought you here, and then look at what you're doing and think about where that's going to take you. You're going to be a famous ass YouTuber in 5 years, Tim, because of what you're doing right now.
Dude, I fell in love with this Instagram page that what they would do is they would take like it's mostly like anime images. I'm assuming it's like from some boxing anime or something really, really cool. I've never seen it, but it looks pretty interesting. One of them was like It's going to take you 3 years to get to where you want, but the time is going to pass no matter what. So do it. Start now. It sounds daunting, especially if, you're talking about, like, if I wanted to go be in a bodybuilding competition and I had to start right now, oh my God, dude, the amount of work that I would have to do just to make that happen is insane to the membrane. But if I start now, it's better than letting the time pass and then never starting and then never doing it. I feel like that's a lot of commiserating on sadness in a way, because we're kind of talking about like, didn't do anything, yada yada, right?
So, in order to get out of that commiseration, Tim, do you think you're ready to share your message to Tim 5 years ago?
Yeah, 100%. I think the first thing that I would tell myself is you need to stop hating yourself. People do love you. And the biggest lie is that they don't. I feel like I am talking to myself right now. I mean, but it's true though, right? 5 years ago, I had convinced myself that I was unlovable and that there was nothing redeeming about me. I had pushed away people that I cared about, people I had known for years. I had lost my best friend who had passed away 2 years prior, and I still hadn't faced those emotions. I didn't have communication with anybody. I didn't want to. I wanted to go to sleep and truthfully never want to wake up. And the waking world was too dangerous. It was too terrifying. My anxieties were too strong. The draw to the bottom of that bottle was too powerful. I didn't want to put it down. I couldn't put it down, is another key way to put it. It was hard. And in all of that was this underlying concept of how much I hated myself. And I was convinced that because I hated myself so much, everybody else had to hate me too. There was no love for me. So, yeah, my biggest message to me 5 years ago, stop lying to yourself, man. You're surrounded by so much love. So many people care about you. It may not always be a message that says, hey, I love you, bro. It might just be, hey, man, how are you doing? Did you eat today? Do you want to go hit the gym? Could be simple messages. Love comes in many forms. What about you, Aaron? What would you say to Aaron from 5 years ago?
You're going to get through it, but in order to have gotten through it, you have to go through it. One of the parts of my wedding vows that really broke me was when I said I didn't feel like I was worthy of love, and that the reason that Nicole was going to be my wife is because she proved to me that I did deserve that love. And no matter what I was doing, what I was going through, she was going to love me. You are allowed to heal in a relationship. You don't have to come to a relationship complete and whole. That's not what this human experience is about. It's about growing together and supporting each other. No man is an island. No piece of flora or fauna exists in a vacuum. There are infinite ties of connectivity that bring us all together. One thing that we've been looking at for damn near a year and a half now is that whole concept of everything's additive. So what are you bringing to the table? Whenever we were swallowed in our darkness, we were on our way to becoming black holes. And I'm so grateful that instead we dispersed our stardust and are using that to help build these fantastic worlds filled with love and hope. So many people around me hate themselves in the way that you and I have. And I'm so incredibly grateful for this opportunity to help facilitate some of that healing. And that's why I love hearing Melissa and Ryan and all of our amazing and fantastic guests say, they are not healers. They help facilitate healing. The person I think about the most when I think about how I have felt about myself is one of my little brothers, who shall remain nameless. I'll tell you who I'm thinking about off air. But they drink. They hate themselves. And I can see it. And it breaks my freaking heart, because I've been him, that he hates himself because he's going through a hard time. And everything societally tells him that he should be freaking fine. But if you truly look at everything he's been through, he carries a tremendous weight of trauma and deserves healing.
We've definitely been having a pretty heavy conversation here, talking about healing ourselves from 5 years ago and what we went through and what we're seeing people around us go through, What is it that Melissa taught us whenever we're feeling a tightness in our chest? She said, just shake it out.
Breath, movement, and noise.
Breath, movement, and noise. But yeah, talking about anxiety, talking about depression, and talking about dealing with mental health, it is a serious topic, but we don't have to stay serious 24/7. You should focus on growth, on the growth that you want, right? Mental health is one of the hardest hitting afflictions in society today. And that's because of where we're at, man. Like, take a look at the world around you. We got fear mongering feeding into our minds 24/7. You can't go on social media, pick any social medium except maybe LinkedIn. I don't know if LinkedIn's too crazy, but X, Facebook, Instagram, you go on there and you see one of two things. You either see somebody who's fear mongering because they disagree with X, Y, or Z, or a plane crashed or something like that, and it's going everywhere. It's going viral. Or two, you find somebody trying to sell you something. Like, these are the two things you see. Mental health impacts are everywhere. No matter if you think it's real, no matter if you think it's fake, no matter if you think it's over exaggerated, which it's not. What's traumatic to you may not be traumatic to somebody else, and vice versa, guys. You can't say, well, it's just a plane crash. It didn't affect me personally. Meanwhile, your friend is breaking down crying because of the loss of life. It's completely reasonable.
I saw an amazing quote that was something like this. When self-care fails, community care must prevail. And that's one reason I'm horrified at the current administration trying to cut everything, because they're all multimillionaires and billionaires, and they don't see why people should have this safety net, why people should get these handouts, when the data shows that if someone doesn't have a home, in order to get them stable, you have to give them a home. Without that sense of stability, there can be no growth. It's like building your house upon the sands instead of on a solid foundation. So if someone is so broken and so traumatized that they can't, we must. So that's going to be my kind of imperative call to action here is, if you can, find out a way that you can help.
Yeah.
We've talked to a lot of phenomenal doctors in the mental health sphere, and trauma isn't the thing that happens to you, it's your response to it. So that's why some things traumatize some people and not others, is because how they react to it.
Right.
Which is my concept of everything that exists inside your consciousness. So that's the only thing you can affect and have any control over, which is one reason I'm very sad that I missed our initial conversation with Pickle, because we say that differently. So we say that we're disagreeing when really we're agreeing, and I think that's a cute thing to watch.
Yeah. It's very fun. I do want to make sure we don't gloss over this, right? Because we're condensing 5 years of growth and change into one episode, which realistically speaking, it's not going to be one episode. We have an entire podcast. So, it's going to be multiple episodes, but I do want to make sure we talk about what changed in us. How did we get from being these miserable gremlins existing in society, barely calling ourselves a human being, right?
Big pointy teeth.
Fangy teeth. To where we are now. Why did we start a podcast talking about this? I mean, that's kind of a big deal. It's a huge leap. Going from hating myself and being drunk 25/8 to sitting down and telling people about why sobriety is a great option and how to fix your mental health. It is important to understand too, Aaron and I are not mental health professionals. This show cannot replace actual advice from your doctor, right? If you find yourself in a situation where growth is where you want to take yourself, I would highly recommend, much like the gym, using this show as assistance, but it's not going to be your sole fix. Listen to what Aaron and I have to say. I promise you, we're going to provide you some good little nuggets here and there. But you do need to take yourself to a doctor and sit down to get a more personable, effective method put into place. And that's what I did. It took me years to finally do it. And I'll tell you exactly what happened, right? So at this point, Brittany and I had already been married. We had already gotten together and we successfully did our wedding in California, which, by the way, was a very anxiety-ridden thing for me, right? That was the first time I had ever left my cats in the care of somebody else, my home in the care of somebody else. The first time I had ever flown back to the States since I had moved to Italy. Oh, man. It was rough. It was very difficult. It didn't help, too, that my wonderful friend who was watching our cats called us literally the first day and couldn't find one of our cats. And to this day, Brittany says that she swears she could see it in my eyes that I was going to buy a ticket and fly home immediately. I wouldn't have gone that far. Okay. She found Ava. Ava was just hiding behind my computer desk. Everything was A-okay. Our wedding went off without a hitch. No problems afterwards, except the ring. But that's a different story. But that was difficult. In fact, it was so difficult that whenever it came up for Brittany and I to start talking about what should we do for a honeymoon? Where should we go? We're in Europe. Flying over to Amsterdam is only like a couple $100s. Why don't we do that? That'd be a beautiful trip, a way to celebrate just her and I, our marriage together. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I had already done 11 days outside of my home, that was hard on me. It took a mental toll that by the time I finally got home and was able to sit down on my own couch, I didn't want to leave. And that was the first instance. Second instance was, hey, I want to go to Barcelona or Greece. No, I don't want to. I can't leave my house. And Brittany said, your anxiety's gotten worse. And that was the Tetris piece that fell into place. That was when the whole game ended. And I was like, oh my God, you are right. This legitimately has gotten worse. What am I doing about this? I can't just keep relying on perseverance and positivity to get me through this. I need help. I need external assistance at this point, which I got myself scheduled an appointment with my doctor. My doctor took a look at what I've been living with and said, holy shit. He was like, you have a generalized anxiety disorder? I said, this is general?
Yeah, like O10 general.
Yeah, this is a general? A brigadier general? Like, what are we talking about here, doc? And he immediately passed me some Zoloft and said, here you go, buddy. He said, give it a couple weeks, you'll start feeling the effects take place. Well, I did start feeling the effects after that first couple of weeks, but it wasn't much, right? It was like, if my anxiety was at a 10, it got bumped down to an 8.5, which was a pretty significant change in a person who's riddled with anxiety and living their life like that. But it wasn't enough. So they did bump me up to like what is considered like the baseline, right? They wanted to start me off on something small, see if I reacted perfectly fine, and then they bumped me up. Thank God they did too, because when they finally got me on like the actual level, I stayed at a nice baseline for years past that point. I'm talking up until early 2024 when, I was starting to look at some other things and the anxiety started creaking back in. But I already knew when the anxiety started showing back up. One, I knew the symptoms. We talked about it. Tightness of the chest, the constant feeling that something bad's going to happen, the inability to want to leave my house, right? I felt those coming back. And I said, nope, we're not doing this. So I went back to my doctor and I told him. And we bumped up some medications again. The reason why I bring this up and why I think it's so important to understand is there's so much stigma that surrounds medications. People will say, I don't want it to change who I am. I don't want to become a Zoloft zombie or whatever the words are that exist out there. If anybody's ever seen like the Lunestra commercials from like 10 years ago or whatever, well, they'll be like, taking Lunestra can help you fall asleep at night. Side effects may include, and then there's like a laundry list of things that it could also do to you. It's like, yeah, those are possible side effects. Are they going to be that extreme? Probably not, as long as you're within a healthy realm and you're open and honest with your doctor. But medication, it can be a scary leap. It can be a scary leap for some people. And maybe that's why counseling is a good first step, but I jumped straight into medication because I knew counseling was going to help, but I knew medication was going to give me what I needed, which was the roundness, the edges off of my emotions, because they were sharp. What about you, Aaron? How did you start fist fighting your way through your major depressive disorder?
So going through my med board, I had to consult with several specialists. We tried some medications. The first several didn't work because, as we've stated several times, the art behind psychotherapy and psychiatry, it is a lot more art than science. It's throwing a bunch of medications at a board and seeing what sticks. One of them actually brought me some pretty severe suicidal ideations. So I upended that bottle into the toilet and flushed, and ended up finding Prozac, which helped incredibly. I became a functional person again, no longer trapped in this dark hole, in the tube of my Shawshank Mile with shit over my eyes. And that worked for a really long time until it didn't. And I can blame external things all the time. The VA sucks. I couldn't find a therapist that was right for me, and my primary care doctor wouldn't re-up my Prozac because he wasn't a mental health care provider. Once medication failed, I went kind of the spiritual route. I started listening to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Dhammapada, on repeat. At this point, I was a disabled vet. I was living entirely off of my disability. I got my Virginia medical card, and I was just smoking up every day to hide from my pain. Yeah.
Days of high, Aaron.
Yeah. Real bathrobe Aaron.
Yeah, that was real bathrobe time.
Yeah. But I started recognizing that fog. My sharpness had completely deteriorated. I was no longer Aaron. I was a zombie. So I started really looking inward. Why can't I? Why do I feel so broken? What are these thoughts that keep popping up that are making me hate myself? And I think it was last July, I went and did an ayahuasca ceremony. And my 3 days were radically different from each other. My journey was a difficult one. Felt like I was being hit by lightning bolts. I was in excruciating pain. And the only thing I could keep saying was, I'm sorry. And that helped me realize how much control I had over my life. It was no longer anyone else's fault, what I was going through. The reason I was in so much pain is because that's what I was putting out in the universe. I wasn't helping people. I was making it harder for people to people. I had to care for my inner child. Every time difficult and painful things would arise, I would have to say, I'm here, Aaron. And just, I love you. It's okay. You're safe. I will protect you. And then my third day, I found a different anchor, which was my wife. So the first day was kind of realizing why I was where I was and looking it dead in the face. The second day was finding love and safety for myself from myself. And then my third day was really trying to feel worthy of that love. Since then, I stopped hiding, I stopped numbing, and I started healing. I still deal with major depression. I still have a lot of things I'm working through and growing through, but I've been empowered. It's all on me. And I love that we found the words through our great friend Sammy Marker that it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. Demonizing it didn't help, and coddling it didn't help. So instead, I've got to fix it.
Oh, good old Samantha Marker. Phenomenal person. You know, one huge thing that I want to encourage our audience, our listeners, anybody who's found this episode, let us know if you're struggling, what's the hardest for you right now? You know, what's your lightning bolts that you have to face? Do you feel like you're putting out that much hatred in the universe, or is there something else you're dealing with? I do think it's very important to talk about not just the medicines and the lifestyle choices that we've decided to change in order to help ourselves be better and grow, but there's daily mindset shifts that we also had to go through. And I can speak for myself in this regard, but talking about having to learn to sit with myself and with my discomfort, understanding that the skin that I'm in, no matter how weird it feels on me, it's still mine. I'm just not grown into it yet. Mentally, I'm not there. So learning to take a breath, relax, be welcomed for all of our old heads out there. All of the fans who've been around longer than 5 months. Being able to sit down and be with myself. Realizing that I don't have to have my YouTube videos playing 24/7. They help me sleep. I still listen to them when I go to sleep. They help me sleep. But it used to be different. I used to have to be listening to them because if there was any bit of silence, if I had to be stuck with myself, well, that guy sucks because he's the one who got me into this mess. I could not stand him. Do not be coming over here with that bullshit. And yeah, yeah, learning to sit with the discomfort was a big step. And that was something that took a while to get there. And this was something that dear friend Pickle showed us and talked about with us during our recording. Well, with me, Aaron, you'll see it when it comes out. But it's the small wins over the big breakthroughs that really get you, right? Progress isn't always obvious. It's not always these massive lifestyle shifts. You know, it's not immediately your debt is gone overnight. It's the small things. There's that famous Navy SEAL quote that talked about how you should make your bed every morning because it gives you your first win of the day. I hate that quote. I'm not a huge fan of it. I personally don't think making my bed gives me anything. But, not one size fits all. Some people think that making their bed is going to give them their big win. And if that's what it does, then that's what it does. It's not for me. That's not the big win that I'm looking for. My big win was waking up on time without a hangover. That was my big win. First couple of days, oh my God. I was like, dang, I didn't know I could sleep this well. And then, I kept finding smaller wins. And I would bring those in and I'd start collecting them like trophies. And eventually all of these small wins piled up to a big breakthrough. And that was for me to be where I am today. And lastly, my biggest mindset shift was giving myself some self-compassion instead of self-judgment. And this is a huge deal because this goes back to me talking about how I hated myself so much, judged myself on everything that I did, until eventually I did it. I can't tell you exactly what steps it took, but I can tell you a quote that stuck with me ever since I heard it. And that was when I said something like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And my good buddy Aaron says, don't talk about my friend Tim that way.
Do it.
I don't know. That was like a little switch that flicked in my head. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I saying I'm an idiot? And I've taken that and I've started cultivating that and using it as well, because I hear my friends say that about them all the time. And it's never anything. It's not intended to be a serious thing. Like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Hey, don't talk about my friend Emily that way. Emily is not an idiot. Don't talk about my friend Ketria that way. Ketria is not an idiot. I don't like my friends saying things about that because I don't say that about them. I would never say that about them. I may tease them when I'm in person with them. That's just our friendship. But I'm not going to say they're an idiot. I'm not going to say they're dumb because I don't think they are. And if I wouldn't talk about my friends that way, my friends wouldn't talk about me that way. Why am I talking about myself that way? That's not okay. And that's where I found that self-compassion.
Another amazing tool from our friend Samantha, in her episode, is one thing she gives her clients and her friends is, if you wouldn't say it about me, don't say it about you. If you wouldn't say that shit to my face, don't say it into your soul. And that's, Ryan's theory about it's not what comes around goes around, it's what goes around comes around, or something to that effect.
Oh man,
I love that you brought up the making your bed first thing in the morning isn't for you, because one thing, a lot of people have reached out to me and basically said they want to reiterate Jocko's extreme ownership stuff. You got to wake up at 4 a.m. and make your bed and do this and do that. That's not where most people are. That's where 1% of people are. You need to see where you are, recognize that, and take your next step. If your next step is fixing your thought patterns to be able to get to sleep, take that next step. If your next step is not being on your phone for the first hour that you're conscious, take that step. If your next step is taking a walk in the woods with your dogs, take that step. So, thank you to everyone who found this video, because it came to you when you needed it. Recognize where you are, look into the crystal ball, realize what brought you to this point. Have some grace and compassion for yourself, because holy shit, it's been hard. Recognize what you're doing in this moment and look at where it's going to take you in the future. If you don't like where you're going to be in 5 years because of what you're doing today, find the action that's going to take you where you want to be. If you're at Ryan's level and you're thinking about your life review, take that step. Recognize, whenever I pass, I have to relive all of this and change it to where I get to relive all of this. For me, it's taking all the shit I hate and it brings me pain that I'm creating within myself and transmuting that into gratitude. It's an opportunity. I get to do this.
Have you ever had a moment during your favorite movie when you're like watching it with a friend and you're like, ooh, I love this part. I love this part. Pay attention. That's what I'm looking to be building right now in my life, man.
One thing I yell to everyone on the slopes when I'm shredding gnar is I'll look around and yell, "This is the fun part."
If you crash.
Dude, my shoulder's still jacked up from my last biff.
Best part. Into a wall.
Recognize this is the fun part. I don't identify with that concept of we didn't realize it was the good times when we were in them, because I did. I sure did. I've made the most out of a lot of my days, and I'm so grateful for that. And that's because I have also been gifted a ton of presents, in part from Master Jason, who we're going to be bringing back on the show. Because how in the hell can you be your best now if you're in your past or your future? The way you get better is doing it 1,000 times. So every time that hate boils up, practice transmuting it. Practice getting to a positive life review.
I got a couple words of wisdom to pass on here before we go ahead and close out this episode.
Try and cancel us.
Cancel us. 5 years ago, some pieces of advice I would give myself. And I think this is advice that anybody who finds himself in a situation where they feel like their eyes are covered and they can't get through their pipe. You're not broken. You're just stuck in a cycle you don't know how to get out of yet. Getting help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to face this. You do not have to deserve rest, support, or love. You're allowed to have it just because you exist. And lastly, there is a future version of you that is so damn proud of you, of course, for not giving up.
And if you hate yourself too much for that to be a drive, I am proud of you. Tim is proud of you.
Yeah.
We are standing in the background clapping, cheering. We are so freaking stoked at where you're headed despite where you've been.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't get it right all at once, guys. It's something you just have to keep going.
Left foot, right foot.
Yep. Mental health is not a destination. It's an ongoing, constantly reevaluating process. And honestly, and that's okay. You don't have to focus on, I want to be at point Y when you got X, Y, and Z. So many different paths for you to take. I want to thank everybody who's joined us. Thank you all very much for watching us. And to the audience who's listening after the live stream has ended and has waited for the episode to be published, or maybe you just didn't know this was happening. I promise you, this is my personal promise from me, Tim, to you, the audience. The next time we do something like this, we'll make sure that we put out more information, because now we know it's possible. We're growing. We're growing. So we'll make sure there's plenty of notice. We'll give you guys a week in advance. Hey, catch us next Monday, next Tuesday, next Wednesday, whatever, for a live fireside chat where you can sit down, ask us your questions. Aaron and I are not mental health professionals, but we know what we're talking about. We've been there. We've done that. We've seen it. If we didn't personally go through it, we know somebody who did. We've talked to the people. We've talked to the experts. So, yeah. Thank you all for listening to this episode. I'm sure there's something in here for you. This episode found you, or you found it for a reason. So, give it another listen. Leave a like. Maybe leave a comment. Let us know what you're struggling with and what piece of advice stood out to you the most.
We would be remiss not to thank our top supporters. People on Patreon really drive us to continue innovating, continue growing, continue evolving. So thank you, Eric Spears. Thank you, Jason Grooms. Thank you, Ketria Hausner. Thank you, Highland Markle.
Sarang Hei.
Me too.
It is important to understand no streetlights cannot replace professional medical assistance. We've mentioned this before. We'll mention it every single time. It's important for you to know that if you want personable healthcare, I'm sorry. I messed that up. I always mess this part up. It is what I do. But if you do want personable health assistance, please go and have an appointment with your doctor where you can sit down, talk with them through what you're facing, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what steps are going to be able to help you get to be the person that you want to be. If you do need help now, please text or call 988 or call 911 for immediate medical intervention.
If you want protracted support and you're at a place in your life where this is the direction you're driving, feel free to use our link on BetterHelp. It's betterhelp.com/NSLP. Gets you 10% off your first month, helps the channel out quite a bit, and it's you getting the help you deserve on your terms. You can switch providers at any time at no additional cost. And once you feel like you've made it past pushing the boulder up the hill every day only to drive it again the next day, you can stop. Retire champion. The way Tim and I did from alcohol. And realize that resource will be open to you when and if you need it.
I hope these words mean a lot to you guys because they mean a lot to me. But be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Peace.
No street lights, but we're finding our way. In the dark, but we've got something to say. Lessons learned and stories untold.